Hey, typical hunks adventure here. So just left the card shop, was in and out pretty quickly. Only had a handful of cards that were high end, and didn't really have anything I wanted, so I wasn't gonna do just cash for everything and didn't want to do store credit. But I just happened to ask about one of the cards, and one of the guys just mentioned, he's like, "Yeah, we just got it in," and he pulled that out for me. So I ended up taking one of the cards that I wanted, and the rest ended up just being cash. So don't know how it would have shown on camera, but it is the Lily's fairy card. So I took that and then a bunch of cash. So it was nice, getting rid of cards that just didn't really serve me any purpose that I didn't need. Being able to get some cash for them, but then also getting a card that I wanted but would never just outright pay for because it's relatively new and just costs a lot of money. Money I would just spend out of pocket like that. But if I'm trading in, getting much money, then sure. And you can also look at it as kind of an investment in a sense too, right? With that card, because just like the other cards, they'd gone up in value and was able to sell. But now that I'm back on the road, I thought I would tell my story, I guess you can call it, just kind of about how I met my wife, and then also just how I ended up out here in Utah. So, born and raised in Erie, Pennsylvania. Lived there my whole life throughout, finishing schooling and everything like that. And had gone to a tech school. And things were going good, but then I had gotten out of a relationship. And this is around the MySpace days, so I was friends with my wife on there, just a random person, in the MySpace days you just add anyone and everyone. No idea how she even found my MySpace. I was putting music up on there, but not music she would typically listen to, so I don't know. I probably just went and was just adding everyone. But in any event, we would chat occasionally, and at some point we had kind of talked and mentioned how we were both single at the time. And we kind of forwarded a bit, and then Facebook came out. Facebook might have been around by this time, actually, and maybe we had decided to be friends on there since everyone was kind of leaving MySpace at that point, which is kind of interesting too, just kind of switching from the MySpace scene to that. But we were friends on there, and we had kind of, talked, and we mentioned both being single, and for whatever reason, I decided I was just going to fly out and see her. Maybe it was, a partial act of desperation from being out of a relationship and then kind of being in like one that wasn't set in stone. I know I've talked about this before, where I kind of mentioned it's like a childhood friend of mine that I was not officially dating, that I would just like hang out with and things like that. But I didn't know if I wanted to fully commit to, being with her. And because of that, I kind of just wanted to be single and open, and I thought, hey, it'd be cool to meet this person that I've chatted to online for years, and she's willing to have me fly out too. And she was in college still and lived in kind of like a dorm apartment, so she had some roommates, and so with that, I decided I was going to fly out, and mind you, I've never flown by myself, so that was new. This was definitely spontaneous, just kind of up and decided I was going to do it. Didn't really tell my family much of why. I was just going to fly out to Utah. I remember my cousin thought I was crazy for, even just thinking about doing this. But I remember flying out, and it was kind of interesting. So backstory, obviously Utah is probably like the Mormon capital of the world. There are a lot of Mormons here, and on my plane, someone was also flying to Utah. It was the guy and his wife, and I just remember I was a bit nervous with the flying, and and I was young, and I was just maybe bougie, I'll buy some of the Sky vodka or whatever. That'll be cool. That'll help make the flight not so long. And so I drank that, and I just remember the guy kind of like, oh yeah, I see you're drinking that. Have you ever heard of the Book of Mormon or whatever? He gave me like this pamphlet or something like that, and I kind of just like, all right, thanks, man. Or maybe I had like a business card or something like that. But I get out, I fast forward a little bit, but I meet up with my wife, or my now wife, and I show her that, and she kind of explained what it meant and all these things, because I didn't know. It's just religion isn't as big where I had grown up. Yeah, so that was kind of funny that he gave me that. But to go back a little bit, so we get to the airport, and I couldn't find her at first. And the first thought that kind of rushed into my mind was this a real person? Did I get catfished? Did I just get scammed? And someone's like, oh, we got that idiot that just fly out to Utah for no reason. So there's a little bit of panic there. But then, after like a minute or so, we were able to locate each other. I didn't realize how short she was. She didn't realize how tall I was. Definitely not how she was expecting the sound. That was one interesting thing, that we kind of chatted, but we never called each other before that I said I was going to meet, because that probably would have helped to, alleviate some fears of, is this person real? Obviously there's, voice changers and other things, but, we never did talk on the phone. So it was interesting, hearing her voice in that sense, and then just seeing how short she was. And we drove back to the college town that she was at, which was about an hour or so away. And I just remember taking in Utah, because it's such a change of scenery from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, very green. There's trees everywhere, especially in your EPA. It's mostly flat. You can't really see far, other than looking out at the lake. My great uncle lived up by a landfill area, and that had a big hill. So there was like that area where there's like a steep type thing, but we're not talking mountains or anything like that. So coming out here, it was definitely eye-opening for me. And this was around spring break too, so like in March, April time of year. I think more so in March. I just remember my work, they're like, oh, you're doing spring break, where are you going? Is it going to be warm? And I was like, oh no, I'm meeting this girl that I've never met before and going to Utah, and it's going to be like snowy and cold there. And they're just like, oh, alright, well, enjoy your trip. Yeah, all the mountains, taking that in, and the snow, and just everything else. It was breathtaking. It was really cool to see. Now I'm kind of used to it. Obviously, I just still do take pictures of the mountains, especially around the Salt Lake area, because they're just so defined, and there's all the cool peaks and just the bridges and everything. It's really neat. We get up to the college town, and being young adults, we were just out and about, shopping and checking out things. So we went to some of the shopping outlets. There's this cool bookstore that I don't think is around anymore, or at least not in that town. But it was called Hastings, and we'd check out the books and the pulp culture merchandise that they had there. And that was a lot of fun, kind of looking at those. I think during this trip we had gone to the zoo that they had there, which was very lackluster compared to the zoo in Erie, Pennsylvania, which has all kinds of stuff, exotic things too. Whereas this one was more of like the surrounding areas type animals that you might see. So nothing too cool personally, but still, it was nice to check out. And there's a yogurt place called Spoon Me, which is kind of like a funny name for it, but I'm not a yogurt person, so even though they had all the cool toppings and sweets and things you could put on there, it still just wasn't enough for me to be like, alright, yeah, I like this. But we still tried it, and there's that. And outside of the city, there's this giant lake that we ended up going to. Took photos there. Really cool, especially during the winter, even toward the evening and stuff, because you kind of get like the cool sun and the sky colors and stuff, and you've got this big, beautiful lake with mountains that kind of surround it. And even the drive up there, through all the canyons and stuff, especially in the winter, there's just feet of snow going up on the sides and stuff as you're kind of trekking up this long mountain drive to get to the lake. And it was quite the experience. And then we stayed at the hotel dorm, which was its own experience in a sense, because her roommates, most of them were, if not all of them, were Mormon. So having any kind of relationship in terms of people sleeping together or anything like that before marriage, even just like sleeping and not doing anything, is probably like taboo to them. But I stayed for a week or so. I even got to meet her family, which was kind of cool, but maybe also a little bit awkward, because it's like this guy flew out and he's staying with you in your dorm. I don't know if she mentioned that I was staying with him in their dorm, but it's just like, oh, all right, like, are you her boyfriend? What are you? Things like that. But I'm a people person. I like chatting with people, so it wasn't a big deal to me. If someone's being a dick, then I'll still try and be nice and work through it. Which, ironically, I had a dream last night that I was doing some kind of work, and there's some developer who just kept saying like rude remarks and just did not care, and he was calling me things and calling me an idiot and all this stuff, even though like I was working on stuff and didn't have any issues. But I don't know, that really got to me in that dream. And I kept trying to be nice, and I think eventually he got like, I remember I grabbed him by the throat, and I was like, I'm actually trying to be nice to you. I don't understand why you're being a dick to me. I don't even know why we just hired you, because it was like a new hire. And it's like, how did you get past the interview process being like this? Like, there's definitely no reason for this. And it just like, it blew up. And then I remember my manager, not my current one, but like in the dream, whoever the manager was came to me and just like, hey man, I don't know, we need to work with him, but you're fine. Weird dream. But in any event, it's like, you never know who you're going to come across, right? If you're dating someone, you don't know how their dad or their parents are going to be, or if they have siblings, how they're going to react. And in my case, the week that it came up was my wife's, or not my wife's, like I said, my sister-in-law's birthday. She had turned 10. And so we went to that. I don't think I got her a gift, because it's like I barely, knew my now wife at the time. But we went. It was a good birthday. Of course, I probably took some of the attention away, because everyone's like, who's this guy? And they wanted to talk to me and know more about me and where I was from and what I'm doing and all of that. And that went well. They all liked me. And we ended up, we headed out back to College Town. We took a different route, and I remember that kind of threw me off, because I was like, oh, it's interesting that like we're taking this back road way through these other mountains to get up to this place from before. But we got back, and I think it was like a couple of days later, maybe the night before, I was heading back, and we kind of just talked, and I was like, I think we should date. Like, is that all right? She's like, yeah, I'm fine with dating. So we kind of made it official at that point. And the next day it was a rush, driving to the airport because of the time schedule for it, or maybe it was even that night and trying to get there by midnight or something. But we rushed there against all odds with the traffic and everything else going on. But it kind of sucked because it was so rushed, and having to say goodbye to her, and it just felt like we kind of lost some of that, me getting through and trying to get checked in and all of that. Only to get to my terminal and realize that the flight had been delayed for another 2 hours. But that was nice for me, because I could kind of relax and recompose myself in a way, in terms of just collecting myself. I couldn't really message her much because she was obviously getting ready to drive back, but she wait till I get to my term and all of that, so I talked a little bit there. But yeah, and then I flew back to Pennsylvania, and life was the same. She continued with college, and a couple of months later, she finished and got her degree, and we were just kind of talking about it, because it's like, we're long distance, how are we going to make this work? And so what we decided was she would come to Pennsylvania, only because I already had a job, in some ways my dream job as a network administrator, and I got to work for a nonprofit, which was also rewarding. I got to help people, get to know them, and see how they were helping others in ways, and it was such an awesome job. And so I flew her out to Pennsylvania, I didn't fly her out to Pennsylvania. I flew out to Utah and got up to Idaho and met her family for a bit, and we kind of talked some more. And then after a couple of days, because I spent like a week or so up there, and we had done some stuff, and after a couple of days or so, we packed up her car and began the journey back to Pennsylvania. And that is quite a drive. There's not a whole lot on I-80 that stretches across. Now there are a handful of things, but of course, you have to be at that place at that time. So things like the Omaha Zoo, by the time we would get there, they would already be closed. So unless we were going to, cut our day short and stay overnight somewhere, just to then go to the zoo, to then, have to leave again, get on the road. It just didn't make sense for us when we were just trying to, get back to Pennsylvania, essentially. And so with that, we decided we were just trying to do it as quick as we could, and it ended up being 3 days of about 10 to 11 hours of driving, kind of taking turns here or there. And that's not to say we didn't find a couple of things to stop at that didn't, deviate too much. So there's like a giant Lincoln Head statue we were able to pass. One cool thing we were able to see was there's a pyramid just like off the road a little bit. I don't remember what kind of pyramid it is. It is kind of random to think about, but there is a pyramid that we're able to check out. And I just remember the back road for it just being nothing but like dips and waves of dirt, and it made the entire ride super bumpy. Whether you're going quick or slow, it was just nothing but lots of bumps. And yeah, one of the things that we wanted to stop at that would have been cool was Carhenge, which is kind of like Stonehenge, but it's cars. They were kind of stacked. Yeah, we weren't able to check that out, and it was kind of like a bit off from I-80, honestly. But yeah, we did stop at I think it's the world's biggest truck stop. I think that's what it's called. So that was neat. We took a little bit of time there. Obviously, recharged and everything with food and drinks and stuff. Yeah, then it's just back on the road. We got to Ohio, and I was kind of losing it. Decided to get an energy drink and just to get me through the final stretch of that trip. And just, wanting to ram cars out of the way, because I just wanted to get home. That's what my brain wanted to do, and it's like, no, I can't do that. Yeah, we got back to Pennsylvania, and, lived there for, I don't remember how many months this ended up being, at least throughout the summer. It feels like it was much longer, but I don't know if it really was. Yeah, she got a job at a retail store, and I continued my job as a network administrator. But as the as the months kind of warmed up for summer, it was a lot on her in terms of the humidity, and it was hard for her to kind of adjust. And I'm not a fan of humidity either. I don't know if anyone's really a fan of humidity, especially when it's hot too, because everything just gets like wet, sticky and gross. And for like the house we lived in, we didn't really have like AC or anything like that, so sometimes it could be a bit unbearable. And so I decided to take a risk, just like she had done. It's like, okay, well, you flew out here, you got a job, after you had finished college and kind of gave up things for me, but, it's only fair that I try and do the same. And so, with that, I decided I would part ways with the network administrator job I had, doing computer stuff, and ended up training up an intern that I think they went with, pretty sure, which then ironically he ended up leaving not long after. But yeah, so the process with that, her parents decided they would fly out, only because I had my own car and she had her car that we had drove from Idaho to Pennsylvania, and we didn't want to be separated with the drive, especially like that, because it's just so long. You really want someone else with you. So her parents flew out. One other fun fact, I suppose, is so being from Pennsylvania and Erie, my family and I were all Pittsburgh Steelers fans for football. Now, of course, I'm not like a huge football fan. It's like I'll watch them, but I'm not like diehard. I'm not going to go out and buy, merchandise and jerseys and all that stuff. Her family, on the other hand, does. But her family flew out, and they wanted to go to Pittsburgh. Now, they met my parents and stuff like that, but yeah, they're like, hey, we want to go to Pittsburgh for a day or two and check it out and go to Heinz Field and all of that, drive Romantic Rose. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'm down. I can drive. We'll get there. So we ended up doing that. And yeah, it was quite the experience because I'd never been to Pittsburgh before. I was always worried about going there for whatever reason. And it ended up being a lovely time. The hotel we stayed at was really nice. We did a tour of Heinz Field and got to learn more about that. So that was really neat. We did some walks around the town and checked out things, and went to a couple of shops and memorials and stuff. So it was a really good time. And after doing all that, we get back to my parents' house, kind of talk for a bit, load up the car, and then we set off. And yeah, that was quite a long drive. And I just remember this was back, like before, smartphones were big. You didn't really have, like a way that you could whip out your phone and just look up directions, especially because a lot of people, we didn't have like mobile data in that kind of sense, or at least I didn't. I don't even know how that would work back then. And so I remember we printed out the instructions of like MapQuest or something to make sure that we got to the right direction. And some of the ways it would do it compared to the signs and things you would see on the interstate were just confusing to us. But I just remember her parents didn't use anything. They were just like, yeah, we'll just hop in the car and go. I just remember we almost missed the turn because we were getting confused. I'm like, are they going to get that right? Like, are they going to know that they need to take this? And yeah, it was just interesting to think about. But we all did. We made it to like the right spots and like where we're meeting up for, where we're staying for the night and all of that. And thinking about it now, now that I'm older and stuff, it's not too hard to read signs and kind of know. There are some that are still a bit tricky, I will admit, even like on the way from like Utah getting into Idaho. There's like one main road that does change, but it changes as an exit, kind of. So you would think it'd be exiting, but it's kind of like an exit merging to continue the highway. And then if you were to continue straight, it actually turns into a new highway that'll take you into like, wherever over in Boise. So there are things like that where I could still see someone getting confused if they weren't using GPS or, printed instructions or whatever to ensure you got to where you needed to. But yeah, in any event, we did get to, where we needed to. And once we made it back to Idaho, it was trying to find a job because, I just applied everywhere. I had expenses and things I needed to pay for, especially with my car and just anything else we were taking on. And yeah, I applied everywhere for months and months and months and just never heard back. And then I finally did hear back from a company, but they were located like pretty down in Utah. Like we're talking probably 2 hours or so away, I think was the drive for me, and the interview is at like 8 or something like that in the morning. I just remember waking up at 5, getting dressed, and doing that really long drive all the way down for the interview, and I killed it. I did really well in the interview, but I say that, and then they called me maybe 30 minutes after the interview. They actually asked if I would be okay with coming back the next day for another interview. And I kind of mentioned, I was just like, hey, I drove 2 hours to get down here for this interview. I gave it my all. If you liked me as a candidate, and this was also speaking with them having me like meet the president of the company and some other team members and stuff like that. And just like, if you like me, you'll hire me. I put it all out there in my first interview. If you don't, that's totally understandable, but I can't, in good conscience right now, get a hotel room to stay overnight just to come back for a second interview, essentially. And they said they'd get back to me, and I think it was like a day later that they reached out and they said, I've got the job. They gave me time before starting because they knew I was far away. I think they gave me like a month if needed, and yeah, that's kind of just how that went. So we started looking at apartments down in Utah. I don't know why that we chose the Salt Lake area. I think maybe my father-in-law talked us into it as well, where we just wanted to be near the bigger city instead of going even further down south to be near that job. Maybe it also played into my wife was applying at companies around the area as well and had landed one around that area. Maybe that was the case, because we were both actively applying, and then once I had mine lined up, we tried to find something around. So that might have been the case where that happened for her, and where we had looked at apartments, and then what made the most sense. Some of them weren't that great, or they weren't as clean, or just like the layouts and location. So in any event, we ended up in an apartment that was still a good 30 minutes or so away for me to drive, whereas my wife's work was like across the street, essentially. Yeah, that was my first job and experience with getting into a place in Utah and having a place to stay in Utah, being the apartment and everything like that. And at my first job here, I met one of the guys, and I just happened to mention some of the DJ stuff I did on YouTube, and he had a brother-in-law who was a big fan of mine, apparently, for the stuff I was putting on YouTube, and he happened to see it one day, or my coworker happened to see him listening to one of my mixes or things, and he's like, oh, hey, you listen to that? And he's like, oh, yeah, I love this, and then he's like, well, I work with that guy. So, kind of interesting how, like, small the world can be in a sense, and how, that happened, but I'm glad it happened, because I ended up becoming better friends with them, as well as, his brother-in-law and things like that, and maybe if I remember, I'll have a video or a story kind of talking about my experience with that, and some of the crazy things, because he lived in downtown Salt Lake, across from a homeless shelter, and there's just never a dull moment there. But yeah, that kind of helped me, because then his wife was working at my current company, and she couldn't necessarily get him in over there because they couldn't work in the same department, but he really liked me, and he's like, hey, you should go apply. And I was kind of skeptical at first. I was like, we work together, like, are you trying to get rid of me? And I was kind of confused, and I didn't really understand what they did as a job, but I would say the first job that I did have here in Utah, it was a call center job, so I was always on the phone with people. I didn't mind it, but it is kind of like a ball and chain job where you're stuck at your desk. You can't just like leave and get up or do things. If you're using the bathroom, you have to be quick. You have to put in a certain aux code to show that you're away. And you get micromanaged, and people are always watching and making sure that you're doing things. And if you're sitting on a call too long, they'll start monitoring and trying to figure out why, or asking why you didn't escalate it, certain things like that. Until you are the person that calls get escalated to, then you're kind of just like, you need to figure it out, and you've got, irate customers on the phone waiting for you to figure it out. So it was just never fun, you know. More responsibility, and the higher up you got, the more problem people you'd work with. But it didn't always bother me because, again, you know, like, I want to help the people. I understand they're running into issues, and I'd be frustrated too. You know, you put yourself in their shoes, like, yeah, we got to get this resolved. It's absolutely not okay. You know, it's like, that's how you should be looking at it. But they also have to understand too. It's like, you're trying to do your job and help them. And a lot of them were understanding, but, you know, occasionally you get some, you know, snobby doctor or someone who owned a business, and yeah, they just didn't care. They're like, I paid this much for a service, fix it. So things like that sometimes would happen, or someone didn't want to work with you, and they're like, no, I want to work with someone else. Yeah, that's the nature of those kind of jobs. So, you know, when that happens and I'm on the other end, I try and be mindful, because I know what it's like to kind of be in the, and the same really applies to any industry that you're in, right? Like, we're all just trying to do our job. You don't know where people are at in their experience, how long they've been somewhere, and there's always going to be a new thing that you run into that you may not know. So, you know, you just have to be understanding. But yeah, so the job he was trying to get me into was with the QA testing. He's like, yeah, you just go into a website, you just test things, you know, you kind of go at your own pace, you're not expected for certain things, you're not talking to customers on the phone or any of that. And I was like, well, this sounds great. So I did a ton of research and studying and making sure I was ready and knew my stuff, and I worded my resume and my skills in terms of how I did things to kind of align better. So if it was, you know, researching an issue a customer had and replicating it and getting it to work, I could kind of relate that to finding a defect, having replication steps to, you know, show that I get that defect that happened, and logging a ticket for it. So not necessarily the same, but the same in concept, and how you kind of phrase it and work through that was very important. Attention to detail, troubleshooting, things like that. And I will say the interview I gave for the position to get me into my current company was the best interview I've ever done. I feel like I answered every question perfectly. I did not have anything I regret or wish I would have said, which I know a lot of people do. I was able to answer questions with also kind of hinting or guiding them into a follow-up question in a sense, which is always good if you can mention like some kind of skill or thing, but then leave it somewhat vague enough where they're like, oh, well, you mentioned this, can you tell me more about that? And then as long as you talk more, I would always have a head full of questions to make sure that I'm asking at the end to show that I'm, you know, invested and interested in the company, as well as, you know, what I would be doing. You know, because sometimes they might say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Things like that. But, you know, I would bring up questions, you know, like, you know, when I'm hired on, what is the biggest project or thing you want me to know or accomplish within the first 3 months to show that, you know, I'm going to be a productive member on this team. Things like that I think were really good. And, yeah, it helped me get the job. I'll never forget going in for that interview, meeting the people, becoming friends with the guys in HR, and you know, even after getting hired on with the company, and just, you know, chatting with them. We would do activities and things together. It's great. It just reminds me of you know, being at the company for 11 years now, and yeah, just I've grown so much. I've learned so much. One cool thing with coming over to the company actually was, so before that, when I was still at the call center place I worked at, on a whim, I just decided I was gonna propose to my wife, and just bought a ring, and didn't really ask her, you know, her parents or anything like that for her hand in marriage. And one of my coworkers came and took some photos for me, and I thought it was really unique the way I proposed, in a sense. So we had always talked about having a wedding at her grandma's house in the country, but we knew we probably never would, just because it was kind of like a small place, and we wanted to go somewhere where our friends from both Idaho and Utah could kind of meet together. And so what I ended up doing was I proposed to her at her grandma's house so that we would at least have that memory there. And I'd given her some gifts. I don't remember when I proposed, actually. I think it was just in the summer, just like a random day. But I remember giving her like a necklace, some earrings, a bracelet, and I believe also an anklet. And I then gave her a camera that I had bought her, a brand new digital camera, a nice one. And I had her take a photo of something because we wanted to test it out. And I already had the photos taken of the ring on Rose at our favorite park where we were going to have the wedding. And the other photo was a picture of me with a sign that says, "Will you marry me?" And so she was able to view the photo that she had taken, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, if you hit back, like what other photos?" And she's like, "Oh, there shouldn't be any, I only took this one." And then she hit back, and then she saw the ring, and she hit back, and then she saw, the photo of me. So I thought that was kind of a nice way to kind of tie it all, being thoughtful of the location since we couldn't have it at our grandma's. But then also kind of, I guess, cool in a sense because it's like, oh, I've given you these different forms of jewelry, that go on different parts of the body or areas, but I didn't give you a ring. And so when she got to see that, that was the ring. And then, of course, then I pulled it out and I proposed to her there at her grandma's house. So that was kind of a nice thing. So that was the proposal part. And we were getting married in September that year. And in June is when, actually the end of June was when I was taking the new role at my company, or new job at my company. And they actually gave me 15 days, so there's like a two-week grace period in between. So that was kind of nice in a sense, because that just gave me time to relax, spend some time, not worrying about that before going right into this new job. But with the call center job, you earned PTO. You only accrued it as you worked, which wasn't helpful if you were ever sick and you were, banking on using PTO for a future holiday, and then you just didn't have as much then not super great. And so when I went to my new company, since I started halfway through the year, they allotted me half of the PTO I would have as someone who would have started at the beginning of the year, or like when your PTO resets for the year as an existing employee. And so that was really nice, because that meant I started this company with I don't even remember how many days I got, but it was a good chunk. I think it might have been like 11 days or something PTO that they gave me. And that was massive, coming from what would have been like 2 days, and then trying to make sure that I was earning, a couple more. Maybe I would have gotten like 5 or 6 by the time of my wedding, had I stayed at the call center. So that helped a lot. That meant I could actually have, family come visit for the wedding or before the wedding a little bit, spend some time with them, have the wedding, and have a honeymoon and all of that, and have it all be covered by the PTO. And that was awesome that it worked out in that sense, and I got that PTO and could use it there. And fast forward a little bit to the wedding. It rained on our wedding. It was an outdoor wedding, so that was a bit unfortunate, honestly. That did prevent a handful of people from probably going to the wedding, because we did have a small turnout in terms of my friends. I did have 1 or 2 coworkers that showed up, so that was cool seeing them. At the end of the day, it was memorable because it rained in a sense, and just the experiences we created there. It was a bit of a rush of a day too, because we lived in an apartment still. It's just a 1-bed, 1-bath. So she was getting ready there. I also needed to get ready. my mom had flown in a couple of days prior, and I hadn't seen her at that point for probably 3 or 4 years. So it was nice seeing her, kind of showing her Utah, taking her around to some of the cool spots that we wanted her to see. And then my grandma and uncle from California, who I hadn't seen in even longer of a time, they flew in, and they wanted me to pick them up from their wherever they had stayed to the hotel. Or I think maybe what had happened was they found our apartment and got there, and then they wanted me to take them out for food. I didn't really know where to take them. I still kind of feel bad because like on that side of the family, they're fully Asian, and I just didn't really know where to go. I didn't know if they wanted like Asian food or what, so we ended up just going to a Culver's, because I was like, well, I like Culver's, they got burgers and fries. And I just think about that, where my uncle was probably finding, my grandma's probably like, what the heck is this? But yeah, that's kind of funny just thinking about that. I kind of felt awkward even when I took them there, I think, afterwards, or maybe it never set in until years later thinking back on it. But yeah, of all the places, that's what I chose to take him to. And then we got back to the apartment and got things ready, and then headed out to the wedding. And yeah, because we thought the weather was going to be better, we did do catering. What I ended up doing was Winco, on the stores, they sell these like really big subs, and they're only $5. We're talking like massive subs for only $5, and they tasted good. And yeah, we bought a ton of them and cut them up just to make sure that way we had enough for people. And yeah, after the wedding, we probably still had like 15 or 20 subs. Way too many. And we're trying to get people to take them home with them, and some people did, but yeah, we still had a lot, and we loaded up our fridge. And I had a friend that does some charity work with things, and I believe we ended up giving them to her just to make sure that they didn't go to waste before we went on the honeymoon. But yeah, the day after the wedding, my grandma and uncle had flown back out, so I didn't really get to say bye to them other than at the wedding. We did take a trip with my mom. We went to my work just to show her I worked, and then we went up this canyon with like a very narrow road, and that was a bit scary, but we went through that and got to go through the mountains and stuff. And then I thought I'd take this back road to get up through back to Salt Lake City, in that area, and I forgot to check my gas, and we get up right up behind the mountains where it's just this giant scenic area with a lake and like big open roads, and my gas light comes on. It says I'm low on fuel, and I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. And I started freaking out because I knew there were no gas stations near where I'd come from, and all I could really do was just go forward and hope that there was something there. And didn't really have cell service at that time too, is where we were at. And so I just kept driving, mostly just coasting. Anytime there was a hill, I was coasting. And fortunately enough, there's this small town a little ways in, and basically all they had was a diner and a gas station. And the gas station is what I needed, so I was able to fuel up there. And then, yeah, we got back, took some more photos of my mom, and then we dropped her off. And after that, we went on our honeymoon, which was in Lake Tahoe. And I've talked about that before a little bit, but yeah, that was quite the trip too, because things were going smooth. We stopped at a gas station. This was at a time that I would leave my keys in the car, I guess. I'm not really sure how I went about that. I mean, luckily now, like, my car is kind of keyless in a sense. I just have like the fob, and I just always have it in my pocket. Unless like I need to go in somewhere, my family stays in the car, then I'll leave the keys in the car just so it keeps things running. But yeah, we had stopped at a gas station, got out, got some stuff, and it was like while I was in the gas station that I realized I didn't have my keys on me. And for whatever reason, some cars just decide to automatically lock. I think mine will check, like if the keys are in there, it's not gonna auto lock. But yeah, mine did, and I just remember having to go back in. We had tried all the doors and no lock, and I go in and ask the worker, and she's like, "Hey, we just locked our keys in the car. Do we need to call AAA? What should we kind of do about this?" Luckily, for whatever reason, the worker was like, "Oh yeah, we have a local guy. He can get that undone for you." So they call up this guy, and 15 minutes later, this dude shows up, and he's got a big ring of keys, and he kind of jimmied in and got our car unlocked for us, and we paid him, I don't remember how much, maybe it was like $50 or something like that. Still cheaper than trying to do like roadside service or AAA or whatever to try and get into your car for you. But yeah, that was not the best start to the trip out there. But once we got out, there's key pieces of the road that I will probably always remember to getting the Tahoe that really stand out to me, that allowed me to know that we're getting near there. And it's such a cool experience getting over there. But we get into the town, and of course a lot of things are closed at that time of year, so we couldn't do the lifts or like the sky gondolas. The Vikings home was closed, and some other attractions that we wanted to check out, but we still made the most of it. There were a lot of things that we did do that were cool. There was some kind of lake that we had hiked to, and I remember this like giant bird or something was like flying down and swooping down, and that being a bit startling, and just the really cool views that we had taken in, because it kind of reminded me of the Oregon coast and stuff, where her family and I and everyone we would like go to every couple of years or so. And it was just really nice just being able to be there. And and then afterwards we get back to the apartment, and for whatever reason, I guess I shouldn't say for whatever reason, but because we had everything from like the wedding registry and everything like that, it was all just piled up in front of our apartment door, just like 4 or 5 feet tall piles of boxes. And I was just kind of shocked by that. Not only shocked that there were boxes and things like that, but also that they were still there, because we lived at an apartment on the second story, so anyone going up to the third story or guests, for those people or just anyone that happened to look over there on that balcony and saw those boxes could have easily taken them. That would have been unfortunate, but I'm glad that didn't happen, and that our stuff was safe in a sense there. So, and then after things continued on, and things got a little bit better at my company and moving up in my roles and everything like that, we ended up buying our first house, which ended up being even further from my work. I think it added like another 15 minutes, and then it was like 45 minutes away, and I was taking a different road. If you had watched the video before this one, depending on when these get up, when I was talking about on my way to getting to the cart store, the highway that I talked about, the lights, that was the one I was actually taking in the morning. And it was before a lot of people started using it, because they had built out homes in that area. So like it didn't have as many lights, and when it did, it wasn't too big of a deal. But as they built out thousands and thousands of homes and other things over there, now it's just non-stop lights. So, but I would do that drive, and then when COVID happened a little bit later, I kind of was working from home, and the area wasn't the best, and Jesus Christ, van did not stop. They just pulled out in a busy road and almost hit me and 2 other cars there. But the area we're living in wasn't the best. There was like a shooting that had happened one of the nights, like in the back, at some other house. And there's like some gang activity, and with my son being a year old, or not even a year old at that time, I was just like, this isn't gonna work. We need to move. We wanted to move up north to be near the in-laws, but things didn't work out. There's only so many houses available, and you can wait forever. You just never know. And the house we end up living in now, it was just such a good price. It was brand new. But yeah, it was also at the cost of being even further away, where now I'm an hour from work. But you know, such is life. Obviously I don't expect to move further from the in-laws, I should say. I would like to move further from work, continue being remote, but I'd like to be closer to the in-laws because you know, with each of those moves we were just getting further and further away to now that we're at the point of being 2 hours away. And it's such a long drive. It kind of takes its toll, especially for me with my back and everything going on. But yeah, that probably concludes the video on our story and kind of how I got out here in the first place to you know, being out west in Utah. Yeah, you know, you never know where life's gonna take you. It can all change in an instant, or you know, some kind of action or something occurs that kind of causes it. But it's good to appreciate, you know, the moments and where you've come from, especially as you've grown. In terms of things like, for me, going from an apartment to a house to you know, a brand new house that was being built, as well as just the stages in life of, you know, dating and then being engaged and being married and then having children, things like that. So, but I am still working on getting home, getting pretty dang close. So yeah, hope you guys all have a great day and stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.